Welcome to Shift. It is our version of Coffee Talk today. And I have my cohorts with me. Troy, Call Committee. Ruth, head of a lot of things, but
Steering Committee Data Analyzer. There we go.
Steering Committee. And Kathi, Chair of the Steering Committee. So, finally, what you've been waiting for. We have information for you. We have the data that has been collected, and we are in the sort of the end stages of that process. So, Ruth, do you want to tell me a little bit about what you have?
Yeah, so during the month of April, we did a congregational survey, and we were really excited. We had 135 responses to our survey, which I thought was a really good representative sample. And we asked a lot of open-ended questions about Trinity and how people are feeling, and we had a wide variety of perspectives represented. For example, in worship, people talked about loving the tradition, and we had people talking about needing more contemporary options. We also had a range of issues represented in terms of social justice. Should we be doing more? Should we be less political? So, interesting perspectives of a wide variety of issues. We asked people what 3 factors are important to them as a member of Trinity. And first and foremost came out community and fellowship. People enjoy being with the people of Trinity and feel part of the community. Preaching and teaching was the second most common response. And in the third place was outreach or service and volunteering. So those were areas that people felt really strongly about in terms of the importance as a member of Trinity. Also on the list were youth ministry, music, being a welcoming and all-inclusive community, worship, obviously, education and faith building. So there were a number of things that came up in that area. When we asked people what makes them feel engaged at Trinity, again, there was a wide range of responses. The most common one had to do with outreach. So being involved in service, in outreach to the community was really important and helped people feel engaged. Also worship helped people feel engaged. And another one that came up in this area in a number of different forms were small groups that people are part of. And small groups can include everything from Dorcas and Trinitarians and men's groups and Bible studies and Trinity talks. All of those were mentioned in comments and kind of representative of small group engagement. We asked also about what's important to people in the new senior pastor. And this information will be useful for Troy and the call committee. Some of the comments were somebody that's outgoing, caring, friendly, and I found it interesting how many people mentioned that it would be ideal if the senior pastor had a sense of humor. So
I think that's true about Trinity, is that we like to be together, but we also just have a sense of humor, which is one of the things I love about it.
Yeah, and it fits our sense of community.
Yes,
we enjoy being together, so we build community by laughing at ourselves sometimes.
Or at others.
Maybe just you.
And we asked about natural talents or abilities that we need at Trinity to seek in our senior pastor. Obviously, somebody who's engaging, who has good preaching ability, strong sermons, a good leader, somebody who's friendly and approachable. So those were some of the biggest words that came out of that. And then the final area we asked about on the survey was about what Trinity needs to do to encourage younger families to join in the future. And some of the comments that came up most often were adding a contemporary worship again, continuing to grow and enhance our youth program, and offering more family events. So those were some of the highlights. There were a lot of really meaningful comments in the surveys, and as I said, we got a lot of surveys back. Lots of interesting and useful information for us to continue to process.
And thank you for that. Participation is really amazing.
Yeah. And then the other thing we've done in April and May was we held a series of cottage meetings, and we had 12 meetings in total, representing about 75 attendees, which again was a good representation, I thought. And those meetings were generally an hour to an hour and a half long, and I described them as a chance to reflect. And we reflected as a group about things that we were learning about ourselves. So we talked about some strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities that had been identified in the interviews earlier. And people got a chance to weigh in on those and either agree or disagree or add additional thoughts about Trinity's strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. And then we reviewed data. We looked at data about our community and about so the community of Long Lake, Orono, Maple Plain, but also the broader community, and we saw some trends. And one of the big trends that we looked at has to do with religion. The membership of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America is declining over the last 20 years pretty significantly. We also looked at other mainline churches in Hennepin County, and those numbers continue to go down. And we looked at Trinity's membership numbers and worship attendance and things like that. And we talked about what are the implications for that. And had discussion about what does that mean for ourselves. And I think it highlighted to many people the importance of attracting new young families to Trinity, and it's something that we need to be intentional about. So the cottage meetings were, again, I found them to be really interesting, engaging conversations, because we were talking about important stuff that we don't often make time to discuss amongst a variety of people at Trinity. So
yeah, thank you for running those. So each of the cottage meetings was run by a steering committee member, and there was a lot of time involved, and also for the participants. And Kathi, you also ran a number of cottage meetings. Mm-hmm. What was your learning?
Boy, thank you for asking. Yeah, whether I had 4 people in a cottage meeting or I had 10 people, at 6:30 in the morning, I did the Agape Men's group, Bible study group. The themes emerged very similarly, but they were often 50-50. I mean, it's kind of a little bit where our society is today, that about half the group felt one way and half the group felt the other way. And at one point I had to say in one meeting, it's okay to disagree here. That's all right. And we thank you for your point of view and your voice, because that's what we were hoping to get, is how do people really feel? Because when I come in and worship on a Saturday in the parking lot or in the sanctuary, we're not talking about this stuff, Ruth, to your point. So I felt that people were really honest. People really care about the future of Trinity. And when we shared those numbers going down, and then kind of what's happening in our community, where the growth in the 5 areas, the 5 towns around here, the growth is in Maple Plain. And I didn't know that, and a lot of people didn't know that, but Katie Gagney was on our steering committee, and she's a realtor, and she's a younger person, and she had a point of view. And so it was really delightful to hear from people who were 30 and people who were 80, and all the decades in between. So it was a privilege, Jeri. It was a privilege to facilitate. Troy did it too, right? We also had Jennifer Weiss and John Sweeney were other committee members, and so we'd come back once a week and say, oh, I had such a good group, and this is what I learned. But the themes, to be honest with you, confirmed what we heard in the Karen Randolph Listening Leader group, and then they reinforced what we heard in the survey, And then the cottage meeting themes were also consistent, especially about what we want for the senior pastor. So I think, what I call it as a researcher is triangulation. We are getting validity and reliability here of the themes. The same themes are emerging, and that's what we wanted to find out. So,
What did you hear, Troy?
So, again, I really nothing different than what Ruth or Kathi had pointed out. A couple of things that I'd like to clarify a little bit. When we looked at Trinity's membership numbers, although we are declining, we're not declining at anywhere near the rate that the church as a whole, ELCA as a whole, is declining. So we've been fairly stable, which is good. I think that's something that we can build on.
Yeah, we've been fortunate. Yes.
good point.
Yeah.
Right. And then with what was the last, am I too young to have a senior moment?
Yeah, I know.
I guess not.
It's contagious.
No, Kathi had mentioned about the diversity of viewpoints and how a lot of those cottage meetings were 50-50. And whether it's 50-50 or 75-20, whatever that, I think it varies by group that you talk to.
Yeah.
But the point is, if we were more toward the city, we would have a much heavier concentration of viewpoint, and if we were more rural, we would have a heavier concentration of viewpoint. But since we are where we are, I think that adds to the richness of this congregation, and that's not something that we should hide from. But it is something that, as we look for a new senior pastor, we have to be mindful of, because this new senior pastor is going to need to be able to navigate those both viewpoints. And not take sides on those, but acknowledge the validity of the variety of views that we have at this church. And those are really significant learnings to me from the process to this point.
Well, when we center on God, it takes away some of that if we keep our focus where it needs to be. But I think also, perhaps a senior pastor who, is there such a person who can let it roll off their back?
Somebody with thick skin.
Yeah, thick
right?
skin.
Yeah.
And I think, like we have mentioned before, the ability to talk about things, I think that this process has brought that out. And, I love hearing from people. That's what, like you said, what makes our place rich.
Yes.
Is the variety of people and the different viewpoints and the sense of humor as well. So Kathi, tell us about what the Timeline event was and how that went.
You bet. So on Sunday, May 23rd, we had an event in the Great Hall, and we had, 55 something or so people. It was fun. It was the first time we actually could have cinnamon rolls in the Great Hall. Well, we got them outside, brought them inside without masks. And so it just felt like this great gathering. I think it maybe was one of the happiest days I've ever had at Trinity, just to see people. I was hugging people again after the women's event. That was really fun also. But on May 23rd, we gathered, and we had a facilitated process. John Mueller-Noel is an outside consultant with Church Innovations, and he brought this process in, and it was just so energizing for me. He had us use 3 different stickies, 3M stickies. They were different colors, and so the first question was, with our pink sticky note, what is something you are proud of, as someone that cares about Trinity? And really 4 themes came out of that very quickly. Many of us wrote about the milestones, the weddings, the confirmations, the baptisms in our family, the day we joined the church, or funerals, really meaningful funerals that have touched our hearts through the years. We talked about how proud we are of the capital campaigns we've had here to add more Sunday school rooms, right? Or to add the Great Hall, or to kind of renovate, add this beautiful window, right, to Trinity. Those were very proud moments that we've all been a part of. Evolution of our space. Third, there were so many pink stickies up on this big piece of butcher paper about the staff members through the years. The church will be 90 years old this next year. So they went back and talked about favorite past pastors, Pastor Erickson, Pastor Mark Nelson, right? Pastor Grosser, Pastor Brian, and probably some others I'm forgetting, but also staff people through the years that used to work here and have now retired, and a lot of current staff people that we just treasure.
Except for me.
Yeah,
Nobody asked me.
Jerry?
Nobody spoke my name. But that's okay. I've gotten over it. It's Mark and Jill. I understand that.
Jeri,
Continue
I
on.
appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, you've kind of held the place together for the last year and shift, right? All in favor, right? Yeah, thank heaven for shift. We've stayed connected thanks to Geraldine's leadership. But people who've made a difference in the life of our church, that was really exciting. And then people also talked about the youth program. The youth program through the year have brought people in, so many families in, and we've just added to our, and the preschool has been another strength of ours, bringing people in. The second category that we wrote sticky notes on was the blue sticky notes, an event timer person that was disappointing or sad. We kind of had sad memories around. And I'll be honest with you, I was quite surprised how many stickies were up on the wall from the 1990s, maybe the early 90s. I wasn't here, Troy. Apparently was a very painful period chapter in our church's history. I don't probably have to go into too many details, but it was about pastoral leadership, perhaps a pastor that was let go. There was a lay leader that day who shared a story, very well-respected lay leader here at Trinity, who talked about, I think he and his wife had a senior in high school, and he said it was really hard for his son, who kept thinking, why isn't Trinity more forgiving? Why can't we have more grace and compassion about what was happening? So again, I wasn't a member of Trinity back then, but it was a painful period that maybe we haven't quite gotten over. We haven't grieved appropriately. We haven't forgiven well enough. And so we talked about transition. Can we get better at transition as people leave through the years? We also talked about the loss of people through death and leaving of church staff. It's hard for us, right, when that happens, but we know it is a normal, healthy part of organizations. And then one important comment that was said is that we didn't feel like we had enough high school voices in the room, or even younger families. They were busy that Sunday morning we did this. So how can we get more of their voices? The last green sticky activity was the day event or person gives you hope for the future, and this was my favorite part of our event that day. People talked about how great it was to come back to Trinity with no masks, singing. We see COVID ending hopefully through vaccinations, and the times that we get to have together are so special. We talked about we have hope in our youth and ministries, preschool, high school mission trips, and there's so much hope involved in getting a new senior pastor here. So we ended on a high note. Everybody just is praying for Trinity and our future, and that we can come back together, especially this fall. I mean, we've got it going now this summer. I hear there's a special baptism this Sunday that I'm going to come into the sanctuary for the first time. I'm a month out of my vaccination, so I can't wait to come back and worship inside. But there's just a lot of hope about our future and a new pastor that we're calling, and to kind of start anew, right? Trinity, start anew again. We're kind of out of the wilderness and into the promised land. We know that it'll never be perfect here, but we are very excited about our future. So that was the event. And Geraldine, as we go into this 90th birthday party, this will help us tell our story, right? This is part of our narrative, right. And that we're going to continue to get better. Right?
Yeah, we are. And
Follow
I think
God's call.
that's one of the reasons that we're talking about these and doing shifts with them, is that we want to talk through processes and give you the information and be as transparent as we can. So with that, it's time for some transparency. Troy, head of the call committee.
Yeah.
How's that going?
It's going great. Very excited about the milestone we just passed, which is the job posting. The Trinity's ministry site profile is now actively posted on the ELCA site, so pastors can come and view who we are and if it's a call that they are interested in. So that's a big milestone. To get there, we spent really months completing this ministry site profile. When the call committee felt like it was ready, we submitted it to the church council so that they could look through it, and then we met just to have conversation about it. They voted to approve it, at which point we sent it on to the synod, then the bishop, and Svenningson.
Ann Svenningson, well
Got
said.
it right. She was on a Zoom call with the call committee and the church council just to ask more questions about why we completed the profile the way it was, and dug into specific parts of that profile, which was great. It was clarifying certainly for us as a call committee and council, but also for her, because her task is to try to identify candidates that they can forward to us. So we are now in that stage where we have received some candidates referred to us by Trinity members and others that we have begun to take a look at. Nothing official at this point, but we certainly know some names and have started to look. And then they've been somewhat ambiguous at the synod about the time frame for receiving candidates, but sometime in the 2 to 4 week range from today. They will deliver a group of potential candidates to us that we can consider further.
So people who have seen the posting on the synod and said, I might be ready to do that.
That's exactly right. Yes. So that's very exciting. And now as a call committee, we are really gearing up to figure out how to approach observing sermons.
Right.
That has often had to be in person in years past, but with so many worship services online, we've been able to do a fair amount of YouTube research, which has been terrific.
Right. Yep.
So technology is aiding our process, both with Zoom meetings, which has allowed this process to continue as it has, but also with observing the candidates, which is great. And then a lot of what Ruth and Kathi talked about are very much embedded into that ministry site profile, what we are looking for, the importance of strong sermons and that Sunday morning, the importance of some modern type of worship. You know, we've always said contemporary. I don't know that contemporary worship has a bit of a connotation. I don't know if that is the right connotation anymore, but something different, because as certainly COVID has illustrated, there is a need for a different type of worship now. Yeah. So we're interested to hear what candidates might have to think along those lines. And then, of course, the importance of community is certainly front and center. The importance of youth and family, especially in the Timeline event. Boy, that really
came out loudly.
Out loud and clear. So those are all traits that we have identified and really written down, so that now we can use that document and the information we've gathered to put a good interview together to find the right candidate for.
So the process is you'll do you know how many people you might select or to actually interview?
I don't at this point. I don't know how many candidates will be directed to us from Synod. I know that we have already, just from member referrals, received, somewhere in the 8, 10, 12 range. So we have that number of candidates, and the good news in that is that we've had some candidates referred to us from multiple sources. So they've been, so those obviously are worthy of consideration, and we're going to do that. So I don't know exactly how many, and I don't know exactly the timing, but I do know that we are rolling, and that's a good thing.
That's a very good thing, yeah. Well, and we know that we have a strong church body and strong lay leadership, thanks to you for all of your work. I feel like you're doing full-time jobs. Yeah, they smile like, yes, we are.
But I will say this, it's been a lot of work and a lot of time, but A, it's a privilege, and B, truly, I am enjoying this, because A, the people that I've been able to work with, Kathi and Ruth among them, and a call committee, we've spent a lot of time together. Boy, what a treat to get to know these people better and work together on the front line of something that's going to have an impact on this church significantly in the coming years. And I couldn't be happier to be doing it. So it's a pleasure.
Share who's on your call committee again.
Yes. John Sweeney and Susan Vickerman represent kind of the grandparent segment of our call committee. And then Adam Holmes, Karen Randolph, and myself represent the kind of grown or growing children segment. And then Cassie Enzenauer and Gavin Tempero are the younger family segment of our call committee, and truly, really blessed to be working with all of them.
That's great.
And real quick, a plug is that if people who are watching this know of candidates that they think would be great, it is not too late. Please refer candidates to us. Any one of those people that I just mentioned would be happy to receive that information and talk to you about where we're at. We're all open books and happy to talk.
Great. All right, well, the process is really almost there. We have done a number of the congregational updates, and we hope that the information has been helpful to you. Certainly it has been for me, and on behalf of the congregation, thank you so much. So we are looking forward to today is Grad Sunday. There's a baptism, lots of fun things coming up. So thanks again, and stay tuned for more.